All right, everybody, welcome to another episode of Break the Rules BTR. We are going through the Twitter purge right now, but we have made it through to the other side, and we are going to build something much more stronger and much more resilient in the years to come. Anyway, guys, we have a great panel for you today to talk about Cyberpunk, to talk about these tech dystopias, whether it relates to real life, whether it's better in some cases than what's going on right now. All this beautiful works of fiction that's been created both in video games like Deus Ex, as well as literature and movies and so on and so forth. And with us, we got two newcomers. We have Chaosprime and we have Textile Ranch. Welcome to both of you guys, and I'm going to plug your stuff right now. So, Chaosprime, can you tell us a little bit about yourself first, as well as the video game that you were taking a part in creating?
Hey, yeah, sure. So I bill myself as a cognitive arms dealer these days on Twitter. Basically, trying to build memes that empower people, make them more able to do whatever it is they might be wanting to do in their lives. And I work a lot on a game called Caves of Cud or Caves of Cud, or depending on how exactly you choose to pronounce the letters QUD, which is a far future science fantasy roguelike. I'm not the main developer on that, but I've contributed a fair amount. It's a labor of love. I've put a lot of my passion into it and created things like on the cyberpunk topic, mirror shades exist in that game because I made sure they were in there. Items like the ontological anchor, which is an armband that reality stabilizes you. It's called an ontological anchor because that's what it does.
It's a very beautiful looking game. I'm going to try to bring it up on the screen over here, and you could see some screenshots. So it looks to be made in this like a Nintendo type of minimalist style.
Yep, tile graphics. There's actually a classic roguelike ASCII graphics layer under that. You can turn off the tile graphics and look at everything as letters. If you're
kind of like a Dwarf Fortress.
Yep. It actually has a number of things in common with Dwarf Fortress, though it's a little kinder. So that's nice.
Interesting.
So does that mean you have to have autism to play it, or?
It's not necessary, but it's helpful. It does not require the same autism level that Dwarf Fortress does.
I remember just back when Dwarf Fortress was first a thing, like just people posting about it on V, and I was just like, how autistic do you have to be to play that game? It just it's always just looked insane to me, even as a channer and shit.
Yeah, I think about a 5 out of 10 autism is really necessary to enjoy Dwarf Fortress. 7 out of 10 to really get into it.
Yeah.
And has Dwarf Fortress, and I don't want to get too much in the weeds here, but has it been overcome by the wokeness, or is it still holding out? Because I've heard, things about what we're going to do a stream about with Noah's Hugbox coming up Noah Hugbox, sorry, coming up pretty soon. And I never forget I never remember. I never remember the name of it, Gio, but what is that series, the one with the figures that you paint, that Jules will paint for you for $50 patronage?
Oh, what did you call it? 40K? What did you call it?
Warhammer
40K, but you
Warhammer
called it,
40K.
You called it 40 War or something.
Yes, exactly. But I don't know, Warhammer 40K, has it been besmirched by wokeness right now, or is it still going strong? Because I just want to see, what are the games that have been able to withstand the cultural conditioning?
The games that have stayed based.
Yes, exactly.
It really seems impossible that 40K is ever gonna crumble. I don't know. I haven't really kept track of either Dwarf Fortress or 40K, but.
Well, hopefully your game is not going to crumble anytime soon, and everybody go there and play Chaosprime's beautiful looking game, Caves of Cud. And next we have Textile Ranch, who has a wonderful podcast that I'm going to load up in a second over here, and it is called, over here we got, okay, Contain. Now, why is it called Contain?
I wanted to pick the most nondescript word that essentially means nothing. It's such a generalization that it becomes difficult to sort of when you start a creative project, you want to make sure that it has space to sort of expand and change trajectories. And if you sort of delineate yourself too much from its name and you define something, then it becomes very quickly captured. And so I wanted to just do something that was like so generically hard to place, especially when in its inception, that it just kind of it. So I guess what I wanted to do was basically just do the most generic thing I could possibly say. Like, well, what does contain mean? It doesn't. It can mean many different things. It could mean absolutely nothing. So I guess in some ways it's puts it a little bit hard to place, but yeah, I'm sort of happy with it, I guess.
And you've had some pretty big guests on. You've had Ariel Pink. You've had Dasha Nekrasova, which is such a strange name when you think about it, because in Russian it means not beautiful. Like Nekrasivaya.
Oh, cell phone.
So who would ever choose that as a surname? I don't know. I don't understand this. Alex Lee Moyer, Yankee, John T.T. Palady, Nina Power, Jack the Perfume Nationalist, Johnny Negrin, hosted and produced by Barrett Avner, that is you, good sir, over here, available on Apple Podcasts, SoundCloud, Spotify, and Anchor. And over here it says, contains excels because of its rare openness to experimentation, good vibes, and absence of cynical and defensive internet personas and LARPers. Jack the Perfume Nationalist. So there we go. Textile Ranch, thank you so much for coming in.
One with it was the guy from Twink Revolt and Beyond Woke and Problematic, the one about being like a theory cell on the internet. That was a great one. The Nina Power one was really amazing. I just finished that one.
Oh, wow.
Highly recommend that
Thank
one.
you. Yeah.
And I'm going to do I don't know if I might have to subscribe, because the ones behind the paywall are even more interesting because of their esoteric titles. So
yeah, guys, so subscribe. And
one
also
one of them was actually a guy who had done outsourced State Department work. Basically, he was hired by the State Department, and he totally declassified a lot of this stuff to practice witchcraft in Bulgaria.
Oh my God!
Wow.
That was, and he's an artist, yeah, and he actually goes through the entire process. And I've had Vector Newman, who's the founder of New Life AI, and he has a really interesting angle on things as well, especially if you're talking about non-rational agents. He's a part of that whole art world, sort of like NFT zone, which I think there's a lot of like new fruitful things. I've got criticisms and I have positives with it.
I think it's just a fucking scam. No, I'm kidding.
No, totally. I mean,
People ruined it for me. But go ahead. Sorry, we'll talk about that a little bit. But no, that's interesting. If you could send me some of his artwork, that'd be.
Just going back real quick, you mentioning the titles is what was grabbing you for his Patreon episodes. I can't tell you how true it is. I'm starting to experience with the titles mattering, because I had a Good Burger episode that I did for my pod, and we weren't on topic that much of the episode, but then I changed the title to Dan Schneider, Hollywood's pedophile kingpin, and it's now the third most listened to episode.
Oh, fuck.
Yeah, you got to get them at the start. There's no reason for them to expect it's going to be good. They have to see the juicy title. That's how it works.
But yeah, sorry, I interrupted you, Textile. You were saying about the crypto art world.
Well, I think actually Angelicism 01, he published a pretty interesting article called NFTs After Finitude, which is it's kind of a vague reference to Quentin Melsu's book After Finitude, and he actually makes some pretty interesting points about NFTs and energy expense, and how in the short term it sort of it has all of this potential to, let's say, innovate beyond its limitations, because everyone knows Ethereum is very wasteful to mine. I mean, it takes a lot of resources and energy to do that, and I'm not talking necessarily about I'm not making like an ecological moral value judgment. I'm just saying, like in Texas, we went through a grid collapse that basically destroyed all sorts of, all infrastructure was basically just completely shut down. So people are talking about ETH2, and I think he actually makes some pretty interesting points, just in terms of Bitcoin as sort of like as a vehicle of, in my opinion, and I think you can go back to Land's essay on Bitcoin, which I think is really excellent. It sort of destroyed the notion or the given of dialectics and reason as being the only system of intelligence on Earth. And because it's a self-limiting system with its own embedded truth procedure. So I think when it comes to evading capture, I think it's an incredibly important tool to utilize, just because, as you see with, Wall Street Bets and the based retards, a guy from Robinhood, he can go down and he can just shut the whole thing down. But the way blockchain govern fuck is going on here? That's pretty good.
I always make sure to
Lev,
highlight.
do not put, Lev, please go one episode without the fucking Nala post.
I didn't. I wasn't even thinking about Nala right
Please
now.
go.
Oh, by the
Lev,
way, though,
don't post
actually,
about
hold on,
Nala
hold on.
for one episode challenge. Impossible.
Speaking of Nala, and I do want to get to Adam Lehrer. Is that how you pronounce your surname, by the way? Lehrer?
Yeah,
okay.
Yeah, it's close enough.
So I want to get to Adam, but before, I just want to say, not only should you become a part of Textile Ranch's beautiful Patreon, but you should also become a member of our Patreon. Well, you should his Instagram, but also our Patreon.
I'm looking at his Instagram. Holy fuck, this is wild.
Now, here's the thing. I just want to say real quickly, I'm not going to go through the whole rigmarole of the prizes. Go to Patreon, find out what the great prizes are, but I do want to say one of the $20 patron woodcut magnets that is going to be created will be an inflated lioness. So I didn't want to think about it, Gio. You made me think about it, so there we go. Whoever wants the inflated...
donate $20. Please become a $20 patron for an inflated Nala lioness pin that Lev's father makes. And there you go.
Exactly.
Beautiful.
Never
So
thought
Adam,
those combination of words would ever fly out of my mouth. But I wanted to talk about actually what Textile was saying. But before that, Adam Lehrer, good friend of mine. Please, sir, introduce yourself. First time on the show. And we have Zero HP Lovecraft as well. But he's he's a regular almost. Hopefully he'll be a...
And we have Ostav as well, who we're going to introduce right after Adam. But Adam, go for it, my friend. Tell us about yourself, your Substack.
So I am a writer and an artist. I used to be at Adam Lehrer on Twitter, but I just got taken down off the internet.
R.I.P., brother.
Thank you. I am the co-host of the System of Systems podcast, and currently or at least newly, the curator or whatever, editorial director of the Safety Propaganda Collaborative Substack, where I am looking to publish art criticism, poetry, philosophy, and shit like that from people. Because I'm like art world adjacent, basically. I was more or less an aspirant artist for a long time until I got canceled entirely last summer. So I still kind of have like inroads. But, I found that my friends on the internet, like Barrett here and Gio, are just like 1,000 times more insightful than the people who get published in the big magazines. So I wanted to create a space for that, but also using my sort of proximity to the bigger industry itself to try and inject some better ideas into it.
Excellent. And your podcast, it is on SoundCloud, correct? System of Systems on SoundCloud.
And Patreon and Apple more recently.
All right, I'm going to load up the Patreon link as well. But now let's go to Ostav Nadezhdu, which means hope.
I can't even read that, because my
Ostav
Mediterranean...
Nadezhdu всегда. Здравствуй.
Здравствуйте, очень приятно с вами познакомиться.
Да, я тоже. I'm Ostav Nadezhdu. I'm a writer and a data scientist. I just recently compiled a fiction anthology titled Gradient Descent, and we just did a print release of that actually on Friday. And so that's kind of what I've been working on lately. And then other than that, just mostly been studying and working towards establishing Zoomer supremacy over the future.
And I really enjoyed the Medium article that you did about the teachers during COVID and the They Don't Care About Us article.
Oh, yeah. So one thing I've been doing, because I'm still working through graduate school right now and studying data science. And so one thing that I've been doing during that is tutoring a lot of these high school students. And it's been really obvious, like, just from talking to all these kids, how many smart kids are getting left behind and abandoned by the school system, especially right now, and how much they're being totally dropped by their teachers. A lot of these people like don't even know how to use the online systems that they're setting kids up with, and they have total distance from them. I had one student who had no lectures and no office hours and like no communication with the teacher at all except through email.
Wow.
It was just a bunch of, that's just really gets me angry that so many children are being cut off right at this point when they should be, launched into a greater future.
Well, this is why I was homeschooled from 5th grade. We decided that even in a good scenario like the Catholic school that I used to go to, it still had a lot of problems. And my biggest hope is that there are going to be some more entrepreneurial parents that can figure out ways to teach kids and at the same time give them more time, number one, to sleep, because I don't think kids sleep long enough with the hours of the demanding school day, but number two, be able to have them otherwise, like after this whole corona pandemic, be able to meet up with kids their own age and interact with them and play with them and outside preferably, because the system we have right now, it seems to be shitty when it comes to kids interacting with each other in this prison-like cell of a classroom, or now interacting on the Zoom screen, neither of which I think are good replacements for being able to see each other face to face and not in a very depressing environment like the school.
Absolutely. And actually, I wrote another post about this as well, but the school system, is constructed based off of the Prussian model, right? And I'm sure a lot of you know about that. But specifically, in terms of mathematics, I was looking at the way that it was structured was built by William Hurd Kilpatrick mostly, and he was a progressive educator. He was a scion of John Dewey, and they were really focused on constructing this education system in America through legislation and through pressure from teachers, unions, and things like that to be less focused on some of the more cognitive understanding and mental abilities that were focused on in, say, classical education. And it was much more of rote memorization and preparing students to essentially become factory workers in, the burgeoning industrialization of America at the time. And so I think that's kind of continued forward into this more bureaucratic system that we have now, where America is built so much on paperwork and white collar labor. And it's just more, the school system is built to turn children into functionaries and condition them to that kind of a life, rather than to equip them with education, which is
that's similar to Jacques Ellul's Deschooling. Have you read
right,
Jacques?
yes.
Yeah.
Well, it also seems interesting that the same kind
Ivan
of
Illich, didn't he write the book?
Ivan Illich.
Yeah.
This the same kind of mentality seems to pervade a lot of journalism as well. Just the way that people speak. You can look up any phrase and just see it within this context of like all these specific NPC phrases that have to be used at a particular time to address a particular issue.
What's that thing, the text, ZHP, my man, you talk about this a lot. The program that's not available to the public, but it will be, and then we'll be totally fucked. Journalists will be, maybe journalists will be out of a job. That'll be good. GPT-3,
yes.
there you go. That you could potentially gamify certain journalistic phrases, at least for mainstream, like just factual based news articles. That would basically destroy think maybe that's a good thing. It'll destroy journalism.
But then we'd have like 1,000.
already destroy itself.
Already all the journalists with any integrity have left their publications anyways and just gone to like, I mean, once Li Fang leaves The Intercept, which I assume is going to happen sooner than later, there'll be no journalists, like actual journalists working in mainstream media.
Well, when you say Li Fang, that reminds me of the Dragon Tooth Sword from Deus Ex. So for those who don't know,
It's
Deus
Deus
Ex.
Lev.
What the fuck ever? I don't care. Anyway, I started playing it 2 days ago nonstop. This is why I was unavailable for the. But this is something that I do for you for the stream because I need to know about Deus Ex EX in order to talk about Cyberpunk because I think that is a great example of a cyberpunk genre and I want to get into that more. But first, actually, to go with 0 HP, how would you describe Cyberpunk?
Cyberpunk is here. It's what we're living in now. And it is much less exciting than any of the novels or the games that are made about it portray it. It is mostly drudgery and mundanity and everyone talking on a Zoom call as we are now. It's not exciting actually at all. At least in the real, like in the cyberpunk fiction, you have these cool feudal corporations with like people with samurai swords. And I don't have a samurai sword, do you?
No, only in Deus Ex. And it
We
was a
don't
cool
have our
samurai
Samurai
sword.
sword
in
in
Deus
Deus
Ex.
Ex.
head ports yet, so
All the predictions of the cyberpunk authors came true, more or less. Some of the more exotic ones haven't, though pretty close. One idea you see in Neuromancer is that people rent their bodies out as timeshares to whoever wants to use them with programs that turn them into meat puppets. Now, we aren't there, but OnlyFans is pretty close, let me tell you.
So, in other words, the relationship that the Simps have with the OnlyFans people is such that the Sims are able to collectively control this OnlyFans, or is the OnlyFans person able to control the Simps and kind of guide them into doing the things that the OnlyFans wants, or is it a bit of both?
Well, I was promised we would talk about cybernetics on this episode, so certainly it is both. But if you've ever seen, there was a really poignant thread a few months back about a woman who was an OnlyFans worker, and she described how she felt that her body wasn't her own. She was alienated from every part of her body which had been fetishized and commanded by these men, whether, you know, every single square inch of her, she said, she felt like it belonged to these anonymous online coomers.
Wow, that's pretty intense. And the Textile Ranch, what do you think? Would you want to have an OnlyFans? I mean, you've got beautiful blonde hair, you know. It's,
no. And bringing up, you know, sort of like, I guess you would call this quasi-seminal cyberpunk science fiction is Transmaniacon by John Shirley, where the body is not its own, but you can have this intense transference of anger and energy that can basically turn streets into full-scale wars. And I actually sort of think that mundanely reanimates itself in the cyberspace of social media with Twitter and all this sort of like transferring of, I guess you would say, deficit energies it's like people are having a very difficult time reconciling with the fact that the notion of a negative feedback loop in society is gone. It's finished. It's over. And so when we talk about science fiction as it's existing right now, I think it is playing out before our own eyes.
Real quick, $5 Reagan Lodge, walks in pelvis first. Where all the Shoggoth ladies at?
I believe they're in the plane of Ling.
Yeah.
But you know what I was thinking of what you were saying, Textile, about the I can't believe I forgot it. The crypto art,
NFTs.
NFTs,
sorry. Yeah, correct.
Yeah. You were saying about how it's not the only form of intelligence, and you said this comment recently on Twitter in a reply about the GameStop situation where it's interacting with AI interfaces that aren't exactly intelligent, but rather a way of like getting out of the system and decoding it. It's almost in a strange way you could say a reverse, and I don't know, maybe Nick Land will have like qualms with this, but it's like a reversal of this sort of like Kantian rationality of like reason has to posit a greater sort of complexity of itself in order to motivate. Now that reason itself, let's say reason that's manifested upon things like AI programming and so forth and the algorithm.
Yes.
But now that isn't necessarily quote unquote intelligent, it doesn't have a basis within a particular rationality, but rather a programming to do certain ends. Does that not disrupt like our notion of reason itself or what?
Well, it all depends on your conception of reason, and I think I have if you guys check out, I don't start a lot of Twitter beef, but the few people who I always go after are the neo rationalists because they have because
what
they have
is neo rationalism? Do not dumb it down for me. I'll fucking kill you. No.
I mean, it's
I
basically.
was going to say it.
Oh, what were you going to say, Zero?
Yeah. No, I was going to say that if Geo hadn't. Don't dumb it down for us.
Okay, don't dumb it down. I would say it's an evolution of. I would say, if I were to be honest, I would say it's sort of a ham-fisted suturing of the analytic philosophy tradition of people like Carnap and philosophy and science like Robert Brandom and Wilfrid Sellers, who, in my opinion, is just total nonsense.
Oh God.
With the kind of post-Deleuzian, I guess you would say, school of speculative realism, which is a kind of post-Kantian form of theory in many ways that was also refuted and destroyed by Catherine Malibu, who I think is really amazing. So basically what you have is you have this middle ground of people, and they're not rigorous enough to be true lapdogs for the hard sciences, but they're not like quirky and kooky enough to be like Nick Land and take things to their totally because they're still working within the framework of reason as central and contingent within the human. So it's still working within the contingency of local human intelligence. And basically what Land has said in his crypto post, it was a blog post, but you could almost read it like a short book, is that essentially the transcendental intelligence no longer is central to the agent. It's no longer, it's basically taken itself, because the thing about blockchain governance is that it has its own system of truth procedure that has nothing to do with dialectics. Dialectics is rooted within human reason. I mean, everyone from Hegel talks about intelligence being something that is only imbued through sociality, through a sort of like collective mirroring or reframing of society. But
even
there are other,
Heidegger,
Heidegger would differ, because Heidegger is very much into, same with Bernard Stiegler when he talks about individuation. Like with Heidegger and Stiegler, and to an extent Derrida with language, you're existing in a world that is already made for you. The problem with neo-rationalism is it's so concerned about what one must do, but it has zero qualification or interest in what happens to one. What one is exposed to that is already transcendental within the world.
So in other words, they're too like rationalistic or nerdish to fully embrace like the Milasot like critique of correlation. Like they're still fundamentally. Yes. So it's like they play around with object-oriented ontology and like speculative realism, but they don't. Well, they're still almost Kantian in some ways, right? Like
they're more Hegelian, and this is the issue this is the biggest thing that I take away, is that they still consider, because a lot of it comes with the picture of flow time, because they're very into Ludwig Boltzmann. And Ludwig Boltzmann came up, Boltzmann's brain theory, which is basically that flow time is something that we experience linearly. Like we experience days turns into weeks turns into years, and so on and so forth. But what they're basically positing or saying is that, no, we have no way of quantifying flow time, which is true. We do not, but other forms of intelligence that lack sapience cannot tell the difference. They don't give a fuck whether time is flow time, if it goes backwards. The blockchain does not care. It's embedded logic in truth procedure, in rooting out things like fraud, in doing things like solving complex equations in order to mine. They do not care about this dialectic notion or interest in time. Like, time is irrelevant to these things. So how can you, so this is my biggest issue, and I actually went on a huge thing. I went on Peter Wolfendale and Reza Nagaristani's Twitter line, and I just kind of trashed them. I was like, so your entire theory is based on Boltzmann's theory of that we cannot qualify. So which picture of time can you actually make a case for? I got no response. And then I said, well, look, if you can't give me a response, then I will tell you this also, and this is what Land actually said in his disintegration essay, is basically, if you cannot qualify the linearity of time, and you can't give an alternate to that, that doesn't even matter anyway, because anti-human intelligence exists in this world right now. It exists as we speak. And so when I think of cyberpunk, I don't think of like cyberpunk aesthetically. I think of like the Wall Street bets bros who are using non-sapient forms of intelligence to leveraging that to their advantage. They're actually taking the Promethean angle with intelligence that's not located in the human, which is essentially Lovecraftian. It has none of the aesthetic sensibilities at all with cyberpunk. But I almost see the GameStop bros, and that was something that I tweeted out, as a form of like finance punk is cyberpunk. That's
Holy
basically
shit.
I want to get a
Some
bit
of
deeper
us are
into
still
this.
Marxists, you know.
I want to get a little bit deeper into this as far as what sapient means, but first, a very special $5 Canadian dollar donation from Peter Faust. 0 HP, will you nya for the fans? This is a beautiful thing, a moment of transcendence, a feline delight.
It's a Satori moment for anime people. Put it there.
So for that, how much is $5 Canadian? I think that might be.
Shut up, Boogie!
$5
That's why I always
Canadian's about
charge
like
people-
a nickel.
Whenever I sell art, I always charge people American because I'm. That's my life hack right there. as
In
a
any
Canadian.
case, I hate to disappoint Mr. Peter House, but he will have to take it to my OnlyFans.
Oh no!
But that was a great way, Textile. You weave that into the cyberpunk theme because
But what?
the impersonal forces of technology. Like, I know it's a meme, and we've all seen, you know, like you said in your podcast, we've seen The Matrix when we were 12 years old. So it's like the first immediate thing. But a deeper critique would be what happens when basically rationality is decoupled from like the human subject.
Exactly.
Right. So, and even like you mentioned, like I mentioned, well, you elaborated with Heidegger and Stiegler. I mean, this is like basically the Agamben critique of Heidegger in the open. Like, oh,
Exactly.
he doesn't include
Right. Yeah.
animals and other things. Well, what about Heidegger, like Heidegger 2.0, in like the world of AI and like these impersonal forces? But what happens when that AI, like we're seeing with the bandwave, right? What happens when there isn't sort of
An alternative.
an alternative, but also like a rationality that isn't designed to posit any sort of human flourishing or so forth, or
Okay.
even just the flourishing.
And,
of
and
the
real
system itself.
quick, hold on, real quick. Before the answer to that, I also want to let everybody know we are at 2,994 subscribers. We have
almost
6
3K.
subscribers
Holy
left till we get 3K.
Let's
So,
fucking go!
Exactly. So
Come
anyway,
on,
with the
I know I got some motherfuckers from my Discord server watching right now. Just
Okay.
hit the fucking subscribe button. I got
And also
some people
subscribe-
watching. Hit the subscribe button.
subscribe
showing up
for
outside your
Adam's girlfriend. I don't know who that was in the
Wife.
background.
My wife. That's my wife.
Excellent. So subscribe for the fact of Adam's wife was here on the screen. I really appreciate that. Thank you so much, Adam's wife. And also, I have a question for Textile. What is sapient? Just so I understand the discussion a little bit more.
The way that it's well, obviously, you know, language has. I don't want to sound too postmodern here, but obviously, I think what most people think of
go
when they
ahead.
think of sapience is wisdom. And what is wisdom? It's something that's located within the human. It's local and contingent to the agent. But what happens if agents are non-rational? and this is actually goes back to what Gio was saying about Heidegger 2.0 and Stiegler and Agamben, is that I think, and this is another thing that people brought up, because one thing Stiegler talks about, he's like, the reason why I'm not a dialectician anymore, why I don't like dialectics, is it doesn't take entropy into account of anything. He's like, I'm not a Marxist anymore. I don't fucking care about any of that bullshit, because
I'm getting a Nick Land meltdown vibe from that. Yeah, that's...
exactly. Yeah, totally. And so I think the problem with a lot of these sort of like neo-Hegelian people is that they tend to elide the notion of intelligence with sociality, and then trying to paint a picture of time through that experience, but in a sort of Kantian, in almost like a Kantian way, something that we cannot fully grasp or know. And so it's this kind of muddled complexity. And this is one of the things why I think well, to get back to your point, like when you talk about Twitter bans, right? Part of the reason why blockchain expanded recently, why it went up, is because they saw the dickheads at Robinhood were like, all right, yeah, we don't like the rules of this game because we're humans who have agency over these algorithmic technologies. We'll just change the rules so that people don't win. People already started to win, and when they started to win, you saw the Bitcoin market take off immediately after they had shut that shit down.
But notice the rationality.
I think you may be giving them too much credit, though. The average Wall Street investor, especially the one that lost, that came to Robinhood late in the game. I mean, they just like the stock, man.
Totally. Yeah, they're not interested in philosophy. They ate McDonald's.
I don't think they're thinking to themselves, oh, the blockchain is going to be like something they can't cheat or fuck with. Honestly, they can. All they have to do is the same people who control the exchanges control the brokers. They control things like
especially in regards to Ethereum. Sorry, especially in regards to Ethereum. I do agree there.
But notice the rationality, though. I don't mean to shill, but I came out with a video on it at the time of my YouTube, Giant Art Productions, youtube.com/giantproductions. Patreon forthcoming. Yeah, I came out with a video. It was coupled with like the Wall Street thing, but also with the Ricky Vaughn legal situation. I think you were on the air at the time I mentioned the first time, ZHP. Notice the logic is totally driven not by the usual like the greed that motivates global capital, like this is the best stock. It's motivated by millennial nostalgia, Reddit hive mind, and a combination of the two, but also the aesthetic dimension of nostalgia now being commodified itself, because now it's like this. One of my favorite vaporwave images was the little girl in front of the 9/11 in front of the Twin Towers that said, I was born in a world that doesn't exist anymore. And as an older millennial, I was born into a world that pretty much doesn't exist anymore. So it's like that sort of, I remember when my friends were around and we played video games, we went to fucking GameStop, and that is the logic that drives the meme market, literally meme market. And so maybe
they won't be able to do that again, though. Like GameStop was a one-off. We found out if they had Battletoads. They didn't. And there's not going to be any more Battletoads, Gio.
It would be pretty funny, though. By the way, it would be pretty funny if somebody erected. It would be funny if somebody erected a defiant little girl statue in front of the 9/11 memorial, like the one with those square things.
That would say so much. I should actually paint. That's a good painting idea for me. But I wanted to get Hopeful Abandon and Chaosprime. You also, which is video games, but you were a part of like the group of the sort of, you have a very good aesthetic sensibility as well. And you're almost like who is the author? I have his book actually right here. He did a bunch of like the weird internet-based poetry. Sitter L Creep.
Control Creep. Yeah.
Control Creep. Yeah. In my mind, at least, you guys you get a similar vibe there. But
people are always deciding that we're the same person. Actually, yeah, it's interesting.
But it's, to me, let's bring it back, I guess, to the central question of what comes to mind when people think of cyberpunk, and sort of the reality that we're also living, but also the aesthetic dimension of it? What really makes it, like, if you want to talk about video games or art or well, cinema, I feel is like really the place of cyberpunk, but what is it that makes this such a romantic thing out of all of these sort of sci-fi fantasy genres? Why is cyberpunk something that is so captivating to us?
I think a lot of it is having everything that we are accustomed to emotionally valuing stripped away from us, and like being some sort of like, I don't know, almost like bare metal skeleton of badassness in that condition. Like, you know, like Case in Neuromancer is like, you're basically a junkie, like, you know, living like a hobo more or less. And but like, you know, he's completely alienated from everything and everyone. But you know, because of his, you know, particular, you know, his happenstance and his skills, he's able to participate in this like, you know, amazing adventure into space and whatnot. Though, you know, we would never use those words in cyberpunk because, you know, we're too cool for that. But, you know, but that's what happens. And, you know, you have your street samurai and so on who are like, you know, they're street toughs who like are living horrible lives. You know, they're just like fighting and dying for basically fucking nothing. But like, it's still cool to have, you know, fucking razors replacing your, you know, fingernails, even though like, you know, you're probably like fucking on immunosuppressants so that your body doesn't like, you know, start going gangrenous around the razors in your fingernails and so on. Yeah.
And there is a resurrection of more, let's say, primitive cultures within this technologically advanced society. I don't know, would you say that something like, I don't know, Idiocracy, would that be considered cyberpunk or no?
I wouldn't consider that cyberpunk. I would consider that just dystopian.
Well, I mean, implying
the
there's
contrary position. Yes, this Idiocracy is absolutely cyberpunk.
Yeah, I agree.
Yeah, I'm throwing my weight on that one too.
So James, why do you disagree?
It seems way too retarded to be cyberpunk for me personally.
No, but it's technology that made us that way. So.
But like at that same time, are you gonna call Wall-E cyberpunk?
I knew you were gonna say Wall-E. Yeah,
Wall-E is 100% cyberpunk.
I don't know.
Even.
I would consider Wall-E and Idiocracy more of their own, I guess, type of cyberpunk in a way, but not like I don't know, not what I think of true cyberpunk when I think of cyberpunk.
Well, they
like
lack
retard cyberpunk.
Yeah, they kind of lack the heroic element.
Yeah.
Well, imagine like a JC Denton, but like really, really fat and doing exactly the same.
You're looking at him, boy.
No, I mean, which means then they're basically like anti-hero cyberpunk, like the original meaning of anti-hero, where it's like an unheroic person as opposed to like, you know, like a villain that we like, which is what's come to mean. But
well,
yeah,
people
like there's no.
Well, people do hang on to traditions, at least in Deus Ex. See, I said it right this time.
Deus Ex.
It's
Deus Ex.
As in the phrase Deus Ex Machina.
Yeah.
Yes. So,
or you can just call it gay sex.
Let them tell you how to say it. Say it however you want.
Exactly. So anyway, there was the level that I got to. There was a level that I got to in Hong Kong, and you know they still had the chickens hanging up and the meat that you could just like slap around with your crowbar, and they also had a monastery there with a very angry monk that didn't want to have anything to do with you. But anyway, when it comes to this kind of society, they still seek out certain things from the past, from cultures gone by. You can't completely, you know, dismantle that. And same thing in Blade Runner, the very first opening scene, he was at a ramen place, and ramen's been a staple of Japanese cuisine for a very long time. So it seems like there's no way I can imagine people stripping away a lot of these things that make us human and things that we really come back for, regardless of what, you know, whether we're financially prosperous or not. Everybody subscribe. I still have to check if we're at 3,000. That's what I do for the gap time. But anyway, what about Adam? Do you agree with the definitions that's been brought about what cyberpunk is? Does it mean anything else to you? And do you agree with Zero HP that we are living in a very shitty cyberpunk, more of a cyber prison punk, if you will?
Oh yeah, we're definitely living in cyberpunk right now. To me, there's a few specific examples of how I can use to like illustrate what cyberpunk means to me. Vaping is cyberpunk.
That's true.
Professor Carl Hart at Columbia, this like groovy heroin advocate, is cyberpunk. It's everything with an element of danger or the potential for self-expression in service to a sort of shadow enterprise that interlocks and controls everything. A lot of people will say like Philip K. Dick is like the biggest influence on cyberpunk. That's probably true to an extent, but I think Burroughs is, to me, the first like definitionally cyberpunk author. McLuhan said about Burroughs in Notes on Burroughs that heroin allowed William S. Burroughs to transcend his environment. But the exact opposite was true. And Burroughs actually said that on numerous occasions. Burroughs said that because Burroughs was like naturally a mystic, like his natural state of being was transcendent. So he needed smack to stay rooted in the environment, to really kind of embed himself in the control systems of material reality. But addiction is such a powerful drive that it basically replaces all other drives. And, you know, there's the whole Spinoza alien occupying forces. Addiction just kind of replaces, and I just wrote about this for a book that I'm doing, so it's kind of fresh. So like, we're all like, alien occupying forces are external desires that end up driving our behavior. And I see like the history of modernism through postmodernism to what we have is like Sigmund Bauman said, liquid modernity, or what, you know, or cyberpunk, I think we could call it. Modernism is basically this tension in between authentic expressions of desire coming up against these external alien occupying forces. Postmodernism is you start to, the personal subjective mind starts to lose that battle. And in cyberpunk, we've lost. I mean, I don't think it's incredibly hard to have any, I mean, it's incredibly hard to even know whether any of your desires or drives are real or artificially imposed from outside of you. Everything, whether it's art, whether it's communication, everything is in service to some sort of controlling force that we have little or nothing to do with. That to me is what cyberpunk is. The aesthetic of cyberpunk, the aesthetic of Blade Runner and William Gibson was just an aestheticization of this very dreary social and political economic reality that the world is beyond our grasp, that we're just living in it, but we really have no control over our lives anymore. Cyberpunk is to me just like a lack of control, a lack of focus, a lack of subjectivity, for whatever.
But when have we not had, let's say, theoretically, maybe other people's thoughts, other ideas imposed upon us? Like, when have we really been completely independent of that? I mean, I agree with you. We haven't, but I do agree with you about the control as far as if you choose to be a part of a particular tribe, a particular group of people that look out for each other, they would be able to resist some larger corporate entity or some governmental force like China or whatever imposing certain things on them because they can value the company that they have with each other as a family. And that is something that's important. It kind of goes to their whole ramen thing that I mentioned, you know, why people keep these traditions alive. But I do see a bit of that cyberpunkness within a lot of Twitter profiles as well. Like, I talked about this to no end on previous shows, but looking especially at Zoomer accounts where everybody's got the hashtag and everybody's got the, you know, hashtag BLM, the pronoun, everything is already systematized in their profile as far as defining who they are. And in the way I see it, is kind of stunting one's growth because you're already being defined, you're already being branded with this thing, this role that you are now occupying. And what room does that really give you to grow beyond that?
Lev, I think you stole that take from one of my Twitter threads about how about all these pronouns and stuff. It's already commodifying it's already barcoding the subject and being ready for like.
No, okay. I
processing.
did not steal it. I did not see that thread. But what I did do is I had a dream a year ago where there were these Antifa people who had these baseball caps on, and their race was written on the front of their cap. So I think this is something that goes
True,
on like.
Lev, that's coming true. But if I could interject here for a moment,
Sure.
I'd like to point out the irony of saying that cyberpunk is a lack of control. The etymology of cyberpunk from cybernetic, it means to steer. And what cybernetics actually is entirely about is control.
Yeah, but not
specifically,
our
you know,
control.
Right.
well, sure.
Control
But,
systems.
But like, to qualify it as a lack of control is a very interesting thing. When in fact it's all about control. It's funny you talk about the locus of control as being external. Chaos actually had a great tweet today that the existence of pheromones of the people around you constitutes your exocrine system, and I thought that was a really insightful coinage.
Thanks.
Because really you are very controlled by, like, you can subtract all of the technology and all of the electronics. What's a village? What's a longhouse? Isn't that also a system of control that's external to you? If you read, like, in the Bronze Age Pervert, you can imagine your little village of 25 people or something like that. They arguably control you much more than a big corporation that's far away that just wants you to, like, not say the magic words.
And maybe what's the difference there is that when we have externally imposed drives, externally imposed, rational imperatives that we're adapted to biologically, then maybe we call that a desire, and we say that that's basically good. And when we have these things that are novel to the human system that we're not adapted to biologically, that excruciate our system the way Nick Land talks about, maybe we call those addictions, and we say they're bad.
Yeah, in another thing, oh, sorry about that.
Go on.
Yeah. And another thing I think about too is that one of the issues with a lot of 20th century theories on, and just in general, I think one of the big problems is too many of these theories, whether they be economic or philosophical, they're still rooted in this anthropocentric view of pure intelligence being located solely in a person, in a being,
even in a brain.
Yeah, in a brain.
You can imagine.
Which is, I think, one of the issues I have with Marxism is it's too anthropocentric, and I think it's too anthropocentric to exist as something when you can say, well, the motivating force of history is, quote unquote, the proletariat or the masses or the working class. I don't know in this particular time, I just do not think you can make that sort of claim that the proletariat as they exist, as they were in industrialization, could possibly be the main subject of history, of historicity at this time. So I think that one thing I agree more with Simondon, Gilbert Simondon, a cyberneticist of the 60s and 70s, is that technology is primarily an epistemological question. It's not an economic one. It starts epistemologically. And that's how we sort of go into Heidegger when he talks about being captured by it. It's all about control. It is a control of society. I think HP Lovecraft is 100% correct about that. But it's the kind of control, and it's also the forces of rational agents that are seeking to control systems of already embedded control. And I think that there's multiple layers of people. And I actually like what you said, Gio, about temporality, how, being an older millennial, I played Oregon Trail. So I was born into one world and I was given a different world. This is why millennials are so retarded, by and large,
Yes.
except for
And
all
yet
of us who
you
played
have
Oregon
not died
Trail.
of
We've been in 3 worlds now.
Yeah.
I mean, we were born into one, and then 9/11, and then now this. So
Yeah.
that's 3 different universes.
The Oregon Trail, by the way, when you said Oregon Trail, I imagine like swashbucklers with their swords just killing everything in their path as they're going to Oregon and just leaving a bunch of organs on the ground, to mark the
Full
trail.
of cholera and human, Donner Party cannibalism. It's like, well, that's another thing. Is like when I was a kid, I was like playing a child's game where people ate each other and died of diarrhea. They weren't given like, told you if you're a boy or a girl, blah blah blah, trans subjectivity,
and there is a
sky stuff. Like there is a historical component to it as well.
For the record, there is a zombie apocalypse pastiche of Oregon Trail called Oregon Trail.
Oh, wow. Nice! Thank you so much.
There you go.
And by the way, guys, we have passed 3,000 subscribers on YouTube. Thank you so much. We have reached another milestone, and we will keep going regardless of any of this fucking censorship and this HR mentality. We are going to go through this, and we're going to come back the other side better. And I want to empower everybody here. Go into the description of this video, by the way, and please follow everybody who is tagged in the description of this video who are with us right now. It's very important that you follow all these wonderful people, subscribe to them, and subscribe to their Patreon, their Substacks, and just keep this thing growing, and we really appreciate it. So, anyway, I think it was Adam, you were... No? Wait.
Was it
yeah,
CHP?
I think... Yeah, 0 HP. Or Adam. Whoever wants to go.
What I just wanted to clarify before. When I said absence of control, I didn't mean control systems. I meant absence of subjective, like personal control of subjective human beings over their lives. Obviously, after talking about Burroughs and all that, I'm aware that we're living in a control society. So I just wanted to sound like not an idiot really quick.
Well, I have a question. I have a question for Textile. So when you were talking about the specific rationalists, what brought to mind was the group called rationalists, like people like I know Geo, I call it Star Slater Codex, you know me, but it's Scott Alexander, and but these are people who, here's the thing, I really want to bring people from that side onto BTR to actually have a nuanced discussion about what the disagreements are here. So I would love for you to come back on the stream, and everybody here to come back on the stream when I will be able to bring them in. But in general, what do you think of the rationalists in the Scott Alexander sense?
Well, I was more speaking about the sort of like new urbanomic neo-rationalism school. I think Amy Ireland, she actually called it neo-rationalist propaganda when they were saying on this entire thread with Pete Wolfendale and Reza Negarestani. When I think about people like Scott Alexander, is I think this new form of libertarian, sort of apolitical rationalism that believes in things like, China is highly capitalistic, therefore China is good. They're not impeded by the same standards of political correctness.
Wait, they said that about China? I mean, I got to take a look.
I would say,
well,
if
Spandrel,
you look at...
by the way, Spandrel got banned, but fuck.
Spandrel got banned? Oh, shit.
But he blocked me, so fuck you, Spandrel.
I honestly didn't notice.
I'd love to have him on the show.
When I think of, just to get back, when I think of Slate Star Codex and people like that, is they're anti-metaphysicists. They no longer believe, I think that when you want to claim that metaphysics doesn't have it has no root in material ontology. None. It's not biological. You don't have shamans going out there and practicing these things to fracture the mundanity, to create new, epigenic experiences for people that actually human beings, as we can synthesize layers of reality, we actually, the more we're exposed to, the more we need these kind of like mystical, magical, just events. Let's say they're not by some sky god. We still fucking need them, and people still embrace them. And so the problem with these rationals, I'm not talking about Reza because he's smart enough to know this shit. Like, these people are fucking retards. words. Like, I'm sorry. Like, I just hate to say it. Like,
No, but I don't want to throw out.
I think Scotty
I'm
brought it
sorry.
on himself to be honest, because he thought he could sort of escape the clutches of. No, listen, I don't agree with what happened to him, but he thought he could escape the clutches of the Cthulhu that always swims leftward. But you are right. I mean, for example, and Adam, you know this as well.
I don't want to be that. I was being too critical. I don't want to be that harsh. I'm just
No, you have an
sorry.
important point that you're making.
No, but about
I don't want to
certain,
throw the baby out with the bathwater though, because if we're talking about a critique like Scott Alexander had the critique of neo-reactionary thought, what I would like to do
which
is
ZHP, you know, also if. We'll get into that. Maybe we'll get into that.
No, but real quick.
Because I want to hear ZHP's hot take on that.
When it comes to this kind of conversation, I could say, you know what? Let's not throw the baby out with the fucking bathwater. If we're talking about critiquing reactionary thought, absolutely. Like, I would love for people to come on BTR and critique the fuck out of reactionary thought and do it in a nuanced fucking way instead of these normie takes that people are exposed to, which is very bottom of the barrel stuff. As far as metaphysics, I completely agree with you. I mean, as far as somebody who has done a lot of meditation and still like starts to unlock different levels in the mindscape, what exactly is going on there, I think there is definitely a lot more to this reality than meets the eye. But be that as it may, I still would love nothing more than to get rid of any possible echo chamber that may form in reactionary thought. Because if nobody's around to challenge people who think a certain way, then everybody ends up stagnating. So that is just my own personal view on it.
If only you could tell the Twitter Jannies that.
Well, in the spirit of that, I'd like to actually circle back to something you were talking about, Lev, with regards to like the BLM hashtags and all these Zoomer profiles of people basically categorizing themselves and putting them into boxes like this, right? And I think that that's a little bit of an oversimplification of what's going on. So I don't read philosophers, I read data research papers, but so that kind of informs my view of this situation. But to my mind, the world is becoming more and more quantified, right? We're collecting data on so many more things, and we're piping those into algorithms, which are building these. Essentially, these are human systems of control, which are becoming more and more dominant and more powerful over people. And thanks to things like advanced computer technologies, these systems are able to detach from human beings specifically. And this is kind of this accelerating techno-capital loop that Land was talking about in Meltdown and stuff like that. And so everything that isn't quantified will become quantified as this system tries to increase its power. And so it's kind of impossible to avoid being put in a box in some way, right? And so the way that you fight back against quantization like that is not by trying to dodge the categories, because then you just put yourself into an unknown category and you're still part of this legible group. What you do is you make the categories worthless, you degrade them, you troll them, you know? And so people who are putting BLM in their bios, I'm not saying this is a conscious thing, but it's not a explicit surrender to the system. It's more of a way of coding yourself, acting under a shibboleth so that this this social categorization machine doesn't pick you out as, the rusty wheel or whatever and knock you back down. And I think that similar thing is also happening with regards to LGBT identities. So many Zoomer kids are identifying as queer, as bisexual, but as these very light flavors that don't necessarily impact their day-to-day lives. And I think that's more becoming a way of just coding yourself to be unobtrusive and to continue existing sort of the security of anonymity, not the security of privacy.
Yeah, I don't know if you guys...
Go ahead, Adam, go ahead.
I don't know if any of you guys follow Mark Jacobs, the designer, on social media, but
I've heard of it.
So he was like the creative director of Louis Vuitton in the 90s, just like biggest fucking fashion designer in America for a very long time. Yeah. And Mark Jacobs, he was kind of cool back in the day. He was kind of like the Bret Easton Ellis of fashion, kind of like a normie, conservative, like bourgeois prick, but like cool.
Kind of like Vincent Gallo in film.
Yeah, well, they're very similar, except for like Mark Jacobs is gay and did heroin and shit. But Mark Jacobs is, after he left, I was just talking about this with my friend, the artist Matthew Maloof.
Oh, he's great.
Yeah. He's one of my good friends, and we were talking about Mark Jacobs' Instagram presence these days because it's truly fucking ridiculous. So Mark Jacobs used to be this like pretty masculine, kind of like cool, conservative gay guy with tattoos, and he was like, his whole thing was being like a badass. But after he left Louis Vuitton, his personal brand started collapsing, like profit margins just started plummeting, and he started closing stores everywhere. So over these last 2 years, he's totally rebranded. Like, from what I've heard, he actually had like HR strategists come in for a meeting and tell him how to rebrand his gayness. And they're like, look, you're sort of like 90s Gen X manly kind of gayness. It doesn't sell anymore. You gotta twist this shit somehow. Now he's on Instagram basically as like a drag queen. And he's not transgender at all. So there's nothing like authentic about it. But he's just trying to rebrand himself for the market at this very point in time. And he gets a shitload of likes and his brand is coming back. But anyone with just like any sort of respect for authenticity or subjectivity, you look at this shit and you're like, this is repulsive.
Karl Lagerfeld is frowning in heaven right now.
Yeah. And you could also compare him to somebody like Tom Ford, for instance, who I think is still able to retain. His movies, though, I really like. I really like Nocturnal Animals. I don't know if you saw that one. Yeah. And I really want to see the other movie that he made before. But anyway, like Tom Ford is somebody who I think he's very old school, and I think he does see a lot of the pretentiousness within the fashion industry, and he portrayed that in Nocturnal Animals, where he had the very beginning of the movie these severely obese women dancing around with sparklers completely naked, and then that was shown as a screen, and they were just lying down there naked, and I think they were dead. I think they just like had dead obese women lying down in the exhibition, and that was supposed to be art. Well, so I think this is someone who recognizes this as bullshit.
I feel like, damn, I wish Jules was in here, because being actually in the fashion world, you could give insight to this. But what I was going to say before, I feel like with Cyberpunk, in terms of, maybe I could relate this somewhat to what Textile you were saying, but Adam, you know this very well, is that certain art forms, when it comes to shamanic practices, for example, in the Amazon, you have icaros, which are the lines of various dot patterns and colorful hues that are meant not as, they don't have like, you know, like the Chinese art back in before like the 19th century, they don't have that notion of like, this is an aesthetic in terms of like, this is a work of art. This is rather a form of communication. This is a form of spiritual practice through a form of communication with other worlds. So for example, the icaros, you say them while you're doing ayahuasca, so forth. And all these hipsters, they have fucking icaro blankets, and they look at certain visionary art, and they're like, oh yeah, I get it, man. And they go to their coding job, and they live in their van outside of Silicon Valley. So but when you talk about those type of practices disrupting, and I know that's like kind of like Marxist, like there's certain like out there Marxists that talk about like shamanism being a way of disrupting capital, blah blah blah, but a way of disrupting sort of using things that are ostensibly somewhat aesthetic, but are deeper than just merely like a form of art, but are actually something like a spiritual practice. It seems that some certain forms of cyberpunk have that same spirit, but it's like much more mediated through a like biological apparatus. So like that one scene in Existence by Cronenberg, where it's Defoe's character is like, I play that one game where it's like, I'm God is an artist, man. It's like, to me, that is like you're using like a technological, but that's different because it's a biological, I tried reading through it once, believe me, don't even do this, but it's like the Brazier essay about biomedia, a form of biomedia.
I haven't read that.
Yeah, it's kind of confusing, but it's Ray Brazier. So when you look at it like biomedia, not just technology, that was so interesting and innovative about Existence, but also other work. So in a weird way, it's like Cyberpunk is trying to craft a weird spirituality that can disrupt the certain power structure of that particular time. But in the end, it's always sort of like a failure, because it's like you can't escape that which alienates you to begin with. And I guess if that leaves you like Ted Kaczynski pilled, I don't know what else will, right? Because
Yeah.
Ghost in the Shell pilled.
Ghost in the Shell pilled, yeah. And another thing I wanted to bring up before I'll stop for a long period because I want to hear all of your thoughts. But HP Lovecraft short story, the one that came out, I mean, we'll get to talk about God Shaped Pole, but the one key performance indicators, I wanted to sort of write, not a critique, but I mean, I was going to write something, but then like, it's like, what if I'm sucking his dick, So, yeah. But,
and real quick,
I probably will. I was thinking about for the American Sun, actually. But the thing about what really struck me is that the idea of what one author called, commenting upon Agamben and Foucault, participatory servitude, ostensibly to increase what we deem valuable, which is productivity in a marketplace, in a society. But it's like you constrain yourself through these various apparatuses, through this Neuralink, where the guy, like, he's talking about how if he like says, like, if he watches this number of ads, then he'll get this much social credit point. And he's like, if he goes into the orgasmatron, it's like you have to like defer gratification and you have to like give it to some male lesbian of color. So it's like this weird sort of thing where the thing that oppresses you is what you're not just consenting to, but what you crave in terms of this like weird social conformity of like a decentralized social credit system that is predicated upon the very thoughts and ideas that you have in every given day. Because there's a part where like in HP Lovecraft's story where the main character, he like has this program where he can't taste any food. You could taste amazing things, but you can't taste it because other people in like other parts of the world don't have this amazing technology that can transform the slop into a like what Cypher said in the Matrix, like a juicy steak. What's the difference anyways, right? And there's this other part where if he gets like distracted from his job, like some machine in his like something that like turns the wire head in his brain like zaps his balls with like the forces of 1,000 suns if he like doesn't pay attention at work. So I'm thinking like that model of like not just this totalitarian control system, but what if this is like a deeper form of internalization of these various like technologically mediated apparatuses that inform your subjectivity to such an extent that you think that you're actually doing good? Because it's like, if I don't taste food, then maybe that little African boy across the world, he can also have this machine that makes like the UN nutrition slop taste like a juicy steak, right? So
oh, and by the way, real quick, before Zero HP, also everybody subscribe, and subscribe. But also, we have a question from Mohammed Lamzuri. Break the rules. Can you please ask them to discuss Foucault's relevancy? And I think that'll be for a little bit later after Zero HP. But finally, when you said what was it, biopower? No, biomedia. I thought of biomedia, as in purchase things made by the Oprah empire. Like, I don't know if she's making magazines
well, Oprah
now.
will be a transhuman god in the future, goddess in the future. So
that's the real biomedia. But anyway, Zero HP, go ahead, brother.
I don't know that I had anything to add to that. Geo related my story pretty faithfully. I don't know if I really consider that work to be cyberpunk because it does totally lack the romantic element. There's no real striving. There's a very minor rebellion against the system, which it turns out in the end, the system already predicted and quantified and had contingencies in place for. So I'm not sure if I would really consider that to be cyberpunk. But Gio's very right in that ultimately most of these systems of control do become internalized. You know, we think about most of the sort of rules that we see strangling us recently even something like the ban on Twitter, that doesn't really come from the state. It really just comes from people. You might argue that the state creates the conditions which enable those people, which I think is true. It's a lot of individuals looking at a place like Twitter. You know, they get in their all-hands meeting, they ask anonymous questions, they quickly go much more extreme than anyone probably in the leadership would want to or think to, because you can always criticize Stalin by saying what we really need is 50 Stalins, right? You can say Stalin is great, but we should have more Stalins. So that's why the rules always go in one direction, and why individuals are always the most zealous enforcers of these totalitarian rules, much more than the institutions that contain them.
I think I caught like 2% of that.
I'm sorry. I'm on the move.
Yeah, that may be the reason. But right now, I'm in a difficult position because I'm eating this block of blue cheese, and it's really delicious.
That's disgusting.
What? No, fuck you. It's great.
Who the fuck just eats blocks of blue cheese?
It's Lindy.
Clearly, it's love.
Love it.
Clearly.
I love it.
Here's the thing about blue cheese, okay? This is not just regular blue cheese. This is raw
There's
blue
cum on
cheese.
it.
This is raw blue cheese from A2 cows. So it's really good at digesting.
Wow.
Yeah, I know. Wow, exactly. This is really good. But when it comes to back to the cyberpunk genre, I want to hear from people who I've not heard from as much, and I think that's going to be Ostav. Could you tell us a little bit more about your writings? Because with the writing that you did about the school, is it fiction? Is it nonfiction? Do you do a little bit of both?
So in terms of that, so that was nonfiction, but I do both, and I would say that in terms of like what cyberpunk is, it really depends on when and where you're talking about. So the most general, broad, vague term that I could use is cyberpunk is technology operating on human minds. And I think of it as like this psychic plane, which is the collective landscape of our different minds interacting with each other. And then technologies, especially most recently the internet and networks, have kind of broadened and expanded that psychic world into something that is now large enough to support complexes which are, disparate from whatever individual human minds may have given birth to them. And so we call these things like egregores or memes or whatever. You know, there's a bunch of these different meme words for them. And that in and of itself is like this extending system of some kind of psychic organism which replicates through people's minds and has been enabled by the internet. So in terms of like cyberpunk specifically, it's about those kinds of technologies and how technology gets into a feedback loop with our cognition. And also, I think a big amount of it is generational adaptivity. The word cyberpunk came from a short story by Bruce Bensky in 1980, right? And this was like when it was first coined, was by this guy writing this short story titled Cyberpunks, and was originally about specific people. It actually referred to a kind of person. And his point was that in the same way that punks of the era would, ride around on motorcycles or whatever and cause chaos, do vandalism, things like that. If you thought that was bad, wait until you see these kids who, because of their young minds and their neuroplasticity, are so much better adapted to technological changes in paradigms like networks, and who also, because of their youth, he believed that made them kind of amoral and bad at understanding sort of the social responsibility they might have had. And so those two things together meant that they would just surf around the net all day causing chaos, and older people and systems of control, which are kind of built from the past, would be unable to keep up with them. So I think the story of cyberpunks, a lot of it is about young people specifically, or at least people with that high neuroplasticity who are very adaptive to new paradigms, and how they're able to maneuver through these gargantuan systems of control. so that even though technology is accelerating and catching up with itself faster and faster, there's still someone who's able to navigate through that space. And that's kind of your archetypal cyberpunk hero, who is this person who can live in the system and still thrive and exploit it.
That's wonderful. Yeah, that's great. No, I just wanted to say that.
That is great. But my only question is, when it comes to these young people, there's always a fear that's inherent inside me that the more people are exposed to different kinds of media all the time, the less of which require their own mind to fill in the gaps. So if you would go through the, back in the day, Socrates, if he ever existed, lamented the invention of writing because now people would have, less to do with their mind. You could draw the same parallels to then the invention of radio, the invention of television, the invention of the internet, where, internet less so than TV, because with the internet you are physically participating in it much more than just sitting down and watching something. But still, there is this, the lack of the imagination that may potentially be strong enough to, there is that whole thing about how you have the power to alter reality. And I do believe in that to a certain extent, but I think it also may depend on, it's like saying that, a person who was born to only be 5 foot tall has, the ability to compete in the NBA. They did have, the shortest NBA player. I don't remember how tall he was, but he was... There we go. Yeah. He was in Space Jam as well, right? He was, yeah. But anyway, you would still have certain limitations like that. And what exactly is a person to do then when it comes to being overindulged with all this technological stuff? And are people today, in that sense, weaker of will than they were before they had all these distractions?
Well, you're talking about people as these atomic units who are totally cut off from whatever technologies and society is around them. And I think that certainly in that regard, right, if you look at the modern Zoomer next to the Bronze Age hero, right, then obviously the Bronze Age guy is going to win every time. They get into a wrestling match or whatever, you put them both into the wilderness. But that's not really a useful way of looking at human beings, I feel like. Nobody's an island, everybody is connected to some position in time and space and also in society. And so if you don't build that kind of wall, what you see is that a person can influence so much more through this technological growth and through their involvement in the network than they could isolated. So I guess it depends on what you're looking at.
No, but I agree with that. I agree with the fact that they would be able to influence a lot more with the technology that we have. At the same time, though, a counter to that would be, I don't remember who said that recently, that Lucille Ball had more of an influence on people back during her day because more people knew about her than Joe Rogan does today. But anyway, the other point, though, is not so much about, Bronze Age man is strong, so he'll be able to beat up the Zoomer nerds and choke them out and stuff like Joe Rogan.
It's a
yes,
good possibility.
But what I mean is not that. What I mean is more about the human mind, and that maybe people during the Bronze Age, I'm making a great assumption here, but maybe they needed to, and not all of them, but certain ones needed to concentrate a lot more using their minds to solve certain problems, where today, if we can click a button and do something, it's our mind may be atrophying because too many things are being done to service it, as opposed to the mind itself functioning at a higher capacity. I could be wrong here, but I'd focus more on that part of it.
We see this phenomenon a lot where so-called digital natives are terrible at computers. They don't Google things because, if they needed to know it, there would already be something pulsing in their field of vision telling them that they need to know
Oh man, that's horrible. That's another level down than even what I was talking about.
So I think that again, though, you're divorcing the person from the context, right? I think that Google is an acceptable form of transhumanism, where if you have regular access to a search engine, then that can be considered, offloaded cognitive work, which still ultimately belongs to you. So I don't think that it's fair to make that. Yes. Yeah,
I don't know if it ultimately belongs to you, in the sense that this is why I'm pretty much against a lot of psychedelic usage, because it feels like you're using an external device as a crutch to gain certain insight, and there may be a part of your brain that you're not really working out when you do that.
Go ahead.
Well, this is one thing that I will say about psychedelic usage. In one sense, if again, I hate to say this and sound like a broken record, but if we are to locate intelligence within ourselves, right? Because we're human beings, like our primary focus is locating intelligence within ourselves, then Hegel's ideas apply, correct? In that we are conditioned by our environment, that our ideas are not always ourselves, that soul is imbued through environment and sociality and all these other things. Like that's what, and Heidegger actually would agree with that, but they would take it a step further to say that rational agents just don't control everything. And this is, again, the issue with this sort of anthropocentrism of Hegelian philosophy. When it's centered in the Anthropocene, which is that we should only be concerned with our own intelligence because it's our own, right? Because it supposedly belongs to me and it was given to me through other things that we assume have sapience. I mean, they do by definition, that those are the only forms of intelligence in the world. But if you look at like Dzogchen Buddhist practice, it shows you that there are forms of intelligence that exist outside of the dialectic. If you look at, let's say, when the Orthodox Church, when people pray, they do it through breathing inwardly, right? So, and when you split up the Christ and you make him mind, body, you split the Christ into three different people, and then you start to breathe like that. There is a certain practice that gives you that is its almost form of artificial intelligence, but it's biological. It exists. It's material too. So I think that there's multiple poles here that people are not really diagnosing when they talk about, well, what is intelligence? Does it belong to me? Does it belong to you? In my opinion, I'm like, we're so far past this point. The true cyberpunk is we should not be concerned with with who owns intelligence, with who has a dominion over intelligence. I think any sort of idea that is still concerned with that, it's like, look at climate change, for example. This is maybe a clumsy analogy, but I'll make it anyways. So let's look at climate change. Libs spend so much fucking money just to find out whether we did it or not. Not in climate stability, not in the fact that we can materially experience climate change, because the climate is always changing. But instead of saying, well, maybe a mini ice age is bound to happen, I'm going to spend that money centering it and locating on you poor serfs in red states. It's your fucking fault. And yeah. I will spend billions of dollars to prove and browbeat ourselves and locate the fault within ourselves. And it's a Faustian bargain. And so that's kind of where I was going with it.
But that's why. Oh, sorry. Go ahead.
Go on.
But I'm just saying that's why liberalism, neoliberalism, whatever the fuck we want to call it, creates just a stasis in governance, because that's all it's for. It's to create these NGO apparatuses that study the issues to death, and then all of a sudden nothing changes and it's too fucking late. And I think that's by design. Like, I don't even know if it's. I think it's a feature, not a bug, of the way that they engineer social relations or whatever.
Yeah,
I would push back. I would push back a bit when it comes to making an analogy. Let's say with exercising, I wouldn't pay money to hire people to exercise in front of me or to lift me up like an Arabian sheik and transport me from one room to another. If I were to use my own legs to do that, I would gain some advantage in the long term in terms of health. I think the same thing applies, like, let's say you're talking about breathing. That's a perfect example, because you're using your own willpower to breathe in and out in a specific way, and I think you're connecting to something that's higher than you are. So yes, in a way, we are connecting to other networks that are beyond whatever it is we currently know, but it's we who are connecting to them. It's not like we're looking at a screen screen of somebody else, connecting to them and admiring it and thinking, oh, that's not bad. I wish I could do that. So that's why I think utilizing our own willpower is something that may eventually come to a point, and this is kind of a controversial take because I don't really have evidence at this moment to back it up. It's just like my own will tells me that there is something of a inner internet that we can go into. You could call it the astral realm, you could call it the dreamscape, whatever you want, but people have had many stories, both like with psychedelics and not with psychedelics, of being able to go into these places where they meet other people there who have an avatar. You know, one person would look like a moth to somebody else, another person would look like a tree stump man. So when you get something like that, it's very interesting to me to think about what is exactly going on here with our reality and these other realities we can access. Is the internet just like a training wheels for eventually being able to go into this much more flexible landscape that's not made out of ones and zeros and not made by nerds with a bad back posture?
Are we talking about Serial Experiments Lane then? Is that time to move
I
on to
haven't
that subject?
finished watching the whole thing, so don't spoilers. But I know she starts off with a computer. I don't know if she ends up going into the astral realm. I mean, that would be pretty interesting. But yeah, like, I guess I don't even know if you would qualify something like that as being cyberpunk, though, because you're taking away the wires. You're taking away, all the ones and zeros. You're basically saying that the entire realm of consciousness is our cyberspace playground to explore and to communicate with, that we just haven't really figured out how to hook into that.
Well, again, I think that's kind of the culmination of cyberpunk, is that it's moving towards a point where we're leaving behind the silicon and the fiber optics and whatever. And we're going to be building these more complex systems of interconnected cognition, right? Where one possible vision of the future is a hive mind, where everyone's thoughts are perfectly beamed into everyone else's heads, and you end up with this giant spanning meta consciousness that thinks all these thoughts simultaneously. And I think that there's also, to make another point, like, the cyberpunk is not entirely about cyberspace. And I know I'm not saying that's like what you're implying, but just like, I think that, for example, like, I know one story that people reference a lot as kind of pre-cyberpunk is Stars My Destination. And that one involves a lot of similar elements of this kind of small fish agilely navigating through a technological landscape. And I think that there's even a case to be made for like a cyberpunk reading of Don Quixote. Like, you can go as far back as you want to talk about this chivalry that he's imagining, and he kind of like builds into a hyperstition, brings it into the real world. And I think that's a parallel with Serial Experiments Lane, where this imaginary or not imaginary, but this artificial construct, right, where everything's just existing on the internet. That's not real life. That's just social media. That's just whatever. It then becomes an influence into the real world in this hyperstitional sense.
Well, this is what Gio was saying.
Yeah, no, but that was what I was only saying because the Meme Analysis did this excellent video on comparing Cracky-chan to Lane, if people remember Cracky-chan. She was like the first e-girl ever in the history. Yeah, pre-Boxy even.
Pre-Boxy, internet... aka Shoe on Head. I think they're the same person. But anyway.
Yeah. but like the internet incel sort of like ruined her life on R9K. So it's sort of like the same concept of the Faustian bargain of I don't know, what would be like the female Electra complex of the Faustian bargain? I don't know.
Electra. Like... That was also a character from Nadia, Secret of Blue Water. She was you remember? That was a great anime. But Gio, I think it's also important what you mentioned recently with the whole purging situation. How
by the way, they just got rid of Chenny and Reactionary. Shout out to my boy. I can't believe he didn't do anything. Yeah. Well, I know you know what but again, this is not. Don't get me wrong. It's not about like you did something wrong. It's about an impersonal algorithm that has deemed you part of a radicalization network. That's probably what it is. And so, but anyways,
but Gio, you were saying earlier, and I think it's a very important point that you were making, how we are maturing as an internet culture when it comes to treating the people that we talk to online, not just as these avatars behind the screen, but how there is a lot more of an emotional connection that starts forming over time. That means a lot more than, let's say, certain interactions one would have in their neighborhood with people that they may not actually have anything in common with other than living around the same area. Like there is something much more tangible to the relationships that we start bonding with the people online. So could you expand a little bit on that? Because I think it also relates to creating one's own tribe in the long term here, kind of like how we're doing with the BTR Discord. Speaking of which, guys, go to our BTR Discord right now. This is the place where we're all going to gather, and this is like our what did the Jews have when they were fleeing Egypt? They had the tent. What is that?
Sukkot.
What was it?
They're called Sukkot.
Yeah, but that particular thing, it was the portable Ark of the Covenant. I don't remember what it's. Tabernacle. Thank you. Yes. So our Discord server is kind of like our tabernacle. And by the way, thank you everybody so much for the subscriptions. Right now we are at 3,010. So this is growing really great. So yeah, subscribe right now. And this is our Discord. I just posted it in the chat. Join our Discord right now so that we could keep this thing going and everybody stay blessed as well. But anyway, Gio, could you expand a bit?
I have a lot of mixed thoughts on it that I came up because there was this article recently in the Walrus that I did a video on in my channel. The Walrus, for those who don't know, it's basically like a budget, like Baffler, Jacobite magazine for Canadians. It's like the knockoff version. So, so they have some like particularly ghoulish people working there, like Michael Corrin. But whatever, that's personal vendetta. They had this article about how Zoomers are quote unquote changing the internet and how the internet is going towards a model of like with TikTok activism is going to a model of like extreme like personalization and like the fact that you interact with people through like not just voice and through like impersonal metrics of posting, but rather through like your face, and you interact with people as they are, like they're totally doxed, and the internet is basically going to become like an extension of real life through these like woke Zoomers who are like posting TikTok videos. Basically they're going to destroy like this older like Gen X millennial model of like you had a form of self-created as I said in the video, a form of like self-created subjectivity through posting through, and it's not my point. Again, I stole this from Don Jolly, who is another great YouTuber along with Meme Analysis, where basically you had to prove your worth through these impersonal, anonymous venues of like posting, forums, tweets, articles, you name it, right? But now they're going to destroy that in favor of a total control system where like the Zoomers are going to become like their whole being is essentially going to be extended onto the internet, and they're going to package this as like this is going to be good for limiting things like cyberbullying and all that bullshit. But I'm crossed at this because I do believe that in some ways, especially with what's going on in the world right now with the whole bullshit, the Chinese delicacy that's been imported to us, I feel that
speaking of delicacy, by the way, do you know what this is?
By the way, I did survive, so I don't care about it anymore. So anyways, that's as
by the way,
this is BTR knows.
Do you know what this is? No, but
meat.
Close. It's bison liver.
Peking duck.
Bison liver.
Oh God. Oh my God. So anyways, I bison liver. So I feel like there still needs to be, we're entering in some ways a form of like, as the dark foresting comes about, we're entering a form of like immaturity from a sort of like adolescence where we say that the internet doesn't matter, it has no place, it has no like bearing on the real world. But now the internet is the real world. I feel that we're going to have to like conform to this reality of like, if you were a genuine person, you have to sort of think of it as like an extension of your own self. Because like I said, I said before, like these bannings, it's like this network of power that's come about, and it's a decentralized form of essentially biopower, but a digital biopower that's now going to limit someone's reach in the real world, because they're limiting essentially the vector by which most people in this day and age communicate. And I wrote this in my article in I Am 1776. People read about it. I talked about Giorgio Agamben and all that. But so I feel like this is pertinent to the cyberpunk discussion because it's like that same. They've already accepted, like in Blade Runner, you already accept that, you know, the digitality is just the way of being that it is now. And it's like all of that sort of work. But at the same time, there's this paranoia about it because like Philip K. Dick was an incredibly like, you know, mystical paranoiac. So in a way, it's like your subjectivity is fundamentally in danger. But at the same time, your sense of self, it's almost been totally obliterated by digital technology as such, and it's like just a matter of like riding the tiger and riding the waves of it. So very similar again to like Foucault and Agamben when they say about like the subject is created by power. It's not a matter of like my super special sacred place of like, you know, oh, I could escape it. It's like there is no escape. Put it that way. There's no unless you want to go total Ted pill, but that's
Well, that's actually when you talk about escape. That's something I think about that Ernst Junger actually wrote about in Storm and Steel. He actually spoke, and I think it's really I think it's funny because Jacques Derrida in the late 80s and 90s, he brought Ernst Junger into a lot of his writing, and same with Avital Ronell and people like that. And one of the things that they talk about is that, you know, especially in Storm and Steel, he has this passage like the man is no longer the man, he is now the uniform is the man. And it's this kind of like linguistic play on subjectivity, especially when it comes to the what's placed onto somebody when they're in the middle of war and when they're in the midst of stress. And I think that certain outside stressors also, it's not just technology as it stands, right? Like there's a guy who I really, really love, and if anybody I think everyone needs to read this book. He's the cultural anthropologist Heiner Mollman. He wrote this book called Maximal Stress Cooperation. And he talks about how all cultures, all civilizations, they follow the same pattern as biological creatures in the wilderness. Like when a civilization when a creature in the wild confronts a challenge and it wins the challenge, it gains verticality. The same with a culture or a technology or a civilization. So it almost has its own, in a weird way, and I'm not talking in a panpsychist sense, it almost has its own will to life. But let's say you have one ape and it destroys another ape, it beats it up, it gets the chick, blah, blah, blah. If it's confronted with its victor, the person who beat it, it goes into a depression and it dies after 3 days. The same civilizations follow that almost same exact path, especially when you look at the GI occupation of Germany in World War II. Same thing with Britain in World War I and how they had their necks on Germany, which led to the rise of Adolf Hitler. So in a lot of ways, it's not just, sorry to go on this fucking crazy batshit insane rant, but I don't think it's merely just cybernetic technology. I think that there are certain wills embedded into things that go on way before this.
Egregores, in other words.
Egregores, exactly. Yeah. Exactly. There's always been egregores.
Or specters like Karl Marx's Spectre of Communism, something like that.
Yeah. Derrida, the best book on Marx is A Spectre of Marx by Jacques Derrida.
Yeah.
Oh, and we had a Foucault question as well earlier on for Geo, but also James, I wanted to speak to you, my friend, about.
Hey, I'm here.
Deus Ex.
Nice of you to acknowledge me for the first time all day.
Well, are we going to talk about Cyberpunk? What's it called? 2070?
Yeah, well, we can compare the two because I think it was based on Deus Ex, right?
I mean, Cyberpunk 2077 was based off of the tabletop game, so it was not based off of Deus Ex, but it was definitely influenced by Deus Ex because there's a lot of similarities in, I wouldn't say the mechanics of the game, but the type of gameplay and having the freedom to do whatever you want, tons of quest lines, blah blah blah, all that type of stuff. But the writing in Deus Ex is way better.
Oriented game after.
Yeah.
Wait, before we go on, who here has played Deus Ex?
Oh no, I played Cyberpunk.
So you played Cyberpunk, Adam?
Yeah, I played it.
So I have not played Cyberpunk. Would you say that I am halfway in Deus Ex right now, James? If I'm up to the,
what are you up to again?
I came back to Hell's Kitchen after the whole thing with the triads and the nuclear area and all that.
Yeah, I would say so. Probably. I don't remember the exactness off the top of my head. I mean, I know the last area, which I don't know how much you know.
No, yeah, I know what it's gonna be. I don't know what's gonna be in there, but I know what the area is gonna be.
Okay, so you go to Area 51 then.
Yes, well, for the people who have not played this, I mean, I know it's been 20 years.
It's a fucking 21-year-old game.
You sounded like Shaggy from Scooby-Doo when you said that.
Like Zoinks, man, it's a 21-year-old game. I'm not worrying about spoilers, dude.
But when it comes to the legacy of this game, a lot of, let's say, conspiracy theory conversations owe a lot to it, because especially with what's going on right now, people are already making a lot of comparisons. So what do you think about, like, again, I haven't seen the full thing yet because I'm only halfway there, but would you say that we owe a lot to this game as far as the way that our minds work, at least for the people who have played it, and then kind of like brought that out into the greater culture, where it also becomes kind of like an egregore of its own?
Absolutely. I mean, especially Deus Ex, the original, obviously, and Metal Gear Solid 2. I mean, they, Warren Spector and Hideo Kojima pretty much predicted the entire culture climate to come, and the state of affairs that we're in right now. I mean, to say that both Kojima and Spector are time travelers would not be a bad theory in itself for how much that they got right. Some of it accidentally, like no Twin Towers in Deus Ex because they couldn't fit it into the coding, and then they were like, well, the excuse is it was a terrorist attack, and then stuff like that happened to just pretty much everything else in the game. Now we have one of my favorite parts is the very opening cutscene where they're talking about the virus and vaccines. It's like, why contain it? Let it spill into the streets. They'll be begging us to save them. And that's what you could say is going on right now, is that they let this virus,
we got to be careful. We got to be careful when talking about this. So
well, the virus
still
in
talking about Deus Ex.
The hypothetical, if there was a hypothetical virus that was the same as the one in Deus Ex, where they just let it spill into the streets for profit, for big pharma to control us, to get people used to all these conditions and whatnot that hypothetically are the same as Deus Ex in real life.
By the way, speaking of conditions, I'm noticing a certain device for the back that Textile Ranch has. My advice would be to look at, let's see if I can load it up here. I recently got this thing called the Chirp Wheel. They are not our sponsors yet, but I'm going to be reaching out to them to see what will happen. And I'm telling you, this is a very, I'm not making money from shelling this thing, but get this thing. It's called the Chirp Wheel, and it is so good for your back. See, it has these little grooves over here, like in the center for your spine.
Yeah.
So this is...
that's great.
I think you're going to enjoy that so much, and your back is going to be thankful for you.
I appreciate it. Yeah, thank you.
And you know how I got this? I got this from an advertisement because I probably was, looking up, upper back related things, and in that way, I am thankful. Otherwise, maybe I wouldn't have known about this. So there are
I've
some
had his
good
back broken from all the gay sex.
Wait, is that
It's
why
like
they
the
called
Homer
it
Simpson
Brokeback
can.
Mountain?
Yeah.
Which one did you get? The medium, the deep
All
tissue?
three.
Oh, you got the 3-wheel pack. Okay, there we go.
Yeah, so I go
Better
from one to
deal.
the other.
You gotta-
In fact, I have the smallest one on the back thing. Yeah, you're not gonna be able to see it, but right in front of my monitor here. I have a separate seat when I actually sit down, because believe it or not, I don't stand up all the time. And when I sit down,
Shocker.
I sit down in this 90-degree angle chair, which is made out of wood, just like hard wood, layered on top with a semi-thick yoga mat. So just imagine like an L-shape yoga mat, and that is what I sit on, but I also put the wheel in the back. And that's really good, because that way I could just like sit yoga pose. And I have a whole thing which I talked in previous streams about. I have this pole that I attach my 13-inch tablet to, an e-ink tablet, and I use a Bluetooth remote control to flip the pages on the e-ink tablet when I'm reading books. So I basically have the book right in front of my face. Well, further away, obviously, but it's to eye level. So that way, when I'm drinking coffee in the morning, I hold the remote control with my other hand, flip the pages in the book, and I think, I know, would that be an example of Cyberpunk? Being able to take technology in your own hands, using it maybe not even in the way that it was meant to. Like, I've never seen anybody use these e-ink devices like I use them to read books on. So I really do believe that in that way, I am improving certain things in the world. But how about everybody else here? Like, what are certain ways that you are fighting against the machine of conformity and figuring things out? And I mean, obviously, everybody here, you know, you have Substacks, you have your shows that you are doing, your Patreon. But what else? Like, what else do you think that you can do or other people can do to take more control over their lives and yada, yada, yada? You get what I'm saying.
Maybe all
with
of
this.
us being banned is a good thing then, because
Yeah.
I could actually focus on actually writing a fucking book on
Well, yeah.
neoliberal kitsch or something like that instead of fucking tweeting all day.
Well, the only reason I'm bummed about getting my Twitter taken down is because I have a book coming out, and I don't know how the fuck else to promote anything these days, and I want it to sell because I don't want to have to fucking work. But whatever. As far as combating the ideological hegemonic conformity machine, you have to find your homies. You know, like last year I was so fucking depressed. I just like, you know, I've had friends from, you know, the art world and whatnot that have just dropped me for just having like, I know it's about shit that they don't even fucking care about. Like, you know, like none of them actually supports Black Lives Matter on like a really spiritual kind of level. It's just they're told they're supposed to. And if you criticize it, then they have to drop you. And I've had like actual loss of friends over this shit. But then at the same time, when I lost a writing gig last summer and was accused of being crypto fash and all this bullshit. You know, that's when I'll just tell this kind of, we were talking about it in a group chat the other day, but the way that Barrett and I became friends is I wrote this article. I wrote this review of the last Royal Trucks album, and Royal Trucks is Barrett and I's both favorite band of all time, but I was really disappointed by the album and I kind of trashed it in the review, and Barrett played on that record. But that's what kind of brought us together as friends, you know, like a shared interest in music and philosophy. So you have to make these kind of authentic connections with other people that are trying to stay outside and observant of the system, that are trying to reject. I mean, because we do live in probably the most suffocating culture of conformity, I think.
Oh, yeah.
I think since modernism, and without other people to talk about this shit with, you're really fucked. So just send some emails to some people that you like, DM them. Like, people will talk back to you. Make some fucking friends.
I agree.
Group chats are the way, and group chats are the fucking light.
I hate to
And,
say it, but
speaking
that
of
would be
group
the
chats-
forward fuck.
We have $2 from Kyle, a great patron of ours. Game genres are eager course. Deus Ex lives in Cyberpunk. I couldn't agree more. And we were saying before about Deus Ex, just to circle back to that a little bit again, because I know that we sort of talked about that, then we stopped, and I want to make sure that, James, you get to say everything you want to say about Cyberpunk, because you are the man, and you love... Now, why do you love J.C. Denton so much as a character? Because you have him on your profile picture, you add him as your name.
It's not as much like JC Denton the character. It's just you know, Deus Ex in general, and you know, being the main character. And When I had my old at, it was just like, it was the first thing that came to mind. I'm like, all right, combining MK Ultra, and what am I going to combine it with? I'm like, oh, JC Denton. And then I put that as my AV, and the one that I have on the Discord, not the same one that everyone else uses, which is just like the cover, because it's like, I don't want to. There's nothing worse than using an AV that literally everyone else has. But
we should get that guy on, though, by the way, the male model that they used in that photo. I wonder what he's up to nowadays.
who did they use for it? I didn't even know they used
I don't
the
know.
model. Oh.
No,
I
it's
thought
a
it was just
real
like
man.
him.
No,
You
no,
gotta
but
get Warren Spector on, dude.
is Warren Spector the creator?
Yeah, he's the guy that created Deus Ex, and he's like not done like shit really since the last thing I remember him doing was Epic Mickey, which was not that good, which was a Wii game, and then it had like one sequel. But it was cool though. I did get to meet him at Comic-Con right before it came out because he was there promoting it. So I had him autograph a Game Informer cover because I didn't, I still don't have a physical copy of Deus Ex, which I would like to get one day, like the big PC box and whatnot, but I just never got around to getting it. But he was cool. I think I have a picture with him somewhere floating around in my tens of thousands of photos I have. But
and Warren Spector, he created the whole story and whatever the characters do, or was it more of a team effort?
I mean, games are a team effort.
Of course,
but
I mean in terms of like the brain trust, like the idea.
Yeah, he's definitely the main brains behind it, and I think like he literally came up with the idea for Deus Ex.
Mm-hmm. It is kind of like with and pardon my eating of the blue cheese again, but it is kind of like the guy who created Conan, not really being that buff of a character. So you see over here, Mr. Spector, like he doesn't look like a super, strong FBI agent or whatever. He just looks like a, regular dude, not really working out that much. But in that way, like I do value the power of the mind to be able to connect. And somebody is calling me and it's so rude I should have turned the phone off. Everybody subscribe while I get this fucking phone and turn it the fuck off.
Yeah, his credits on Deus Ex is as director and producer. He was a producer on the first System Shock. Apparently he's working on System Shock 3, which it's like I don't even know what's going on with that game, if that's actually coming out. Apparently System Shock, the remake of System Shock 1 is coming out I think this summer, which is a Kickstarter game, and that's been pushed back a lot. But that just got another demo recently, and it seems like that's actually real. So I'm very excited for that as well, because the original System Shock is just way too aged.
Well, the one thing that I don't like about Deus Ex is the darkness. It's so fucking dark, and they give you a flashlight.
Thinking of your Amazon orders from earlier?
And
we know what's on Lev's mind right now.
Freudian slip.
Oh man, yeah.
You probably want to look for a gamma correction setting and cheat with it.
Well, I don't know. I mean, in Cyberpunk 20, it's kind of like they have.
No, that would make sense, because you would go up to your opponents, you would take the fleshlight out, then you would just
said it again.
No. I meant to say it because you would take the fleshlight and intentionally pleasure them with the fleshlight so that they would coom, and then they would just fall asleep like a baby, and that way you could sneak in.
That was like Eros, and that was the one. Oh, what painting was that by Rubens? Where it was like Eros, was it Eros and Psyche, or was it Eros and the God of War, where she like pleasured him and he like slept? Forget about it.
And enough. Well, no, not enough. Unless you wanted anything else to talk about regarding, bless you, Deus Ex or Deus EX.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's pretty much a perfect game, and it's amazing that it's held up so well. I think the first time I played it was 2010, so the year right before Human Revolution came out, so it was 10 years old at that point. Held up perfectly, and then, the last time I replayed it was February of last year. And again, it just still holds up perfectly. Obviously, the gameplay is a little bit better in Human Revolution, but the writing is just so good. and the gameplay just still holds up, and aesthetically it's amazing. It's like, it's one of those games where it's like it's been memed, where it's like on 4chan, where it's like every time you mention it, someone will reinstall it, where that would be the case for me, but I always keep it installed, and it's just it's perfect.
And the load times are so short. At least maybe it's because I have a fast computer. And by the way,
it's also, a 21-year-old game at this point. But, and it really, not just in terms of writing, but also just gameplay for, just all the amount of exploration, the different ways you can finish missions. I mean, that is the immersive sim genre, I think it's considered, stuff like that. And the System Shock games and the most recent Prey game and, stuff like that has really, I would say, is probably my favorite genre of games, because I just love when you have so many different ways to tackle it. And, Cyberpunk is also, part of this immersive sim, RPG genre. And it's, I can never get enough of games like that. And I feel it's very rare that they actually suck, because you have to put so much effort into making it an immersive sim compared to just, a standard, Western RPG or whatever.
You liked Cyberpunk?
I loved it. I think Cyberpunk 2077 is one of the best games I've ever played. The writing could be better. And obviously there's the bugs and stuff like that. And, performance issues, but it's not bad enough where, it's going to detract from the gameplay for me. I also played it on PC. I heard consoles is literally unplayable.
Yeah, PlayStation 4, it was all like game breaking, like
which I would have never, even before it was, before it came out and we, knew about all the issues, I would have never in a million years bought that game on console. That's something, certain games like that, you just know are made for PC. And clearly that was the case.
See, the thing is, also,
real quick, $2 from Kyle. Also, read Gradient Descent.
Oh, read Gradient Descent. Actually, Lev, you were talking earlier, we were talking about this idea of like technology offloading cognitive work. And there's a short story in Gradient Descent titled I Am Sovereign, which is about a device which enables people to do a lot of thinking and planning and then kind of erase that part of their memory, so they just end up with the end result. And so it raises a lot of questions about this exact thing that you were talking about, like how much of your mind is being crippled versus how much are your abilities being augmented by these technological elements. So go read it. It's available. It's available online, ebook, and print. You can find a link in my pinned tweet, or it's also, I think Kyle has a link as well on his NeoCities page.
Very interesting, and I also wanted to make sure that Adam, you wanted to follow up your thought about Cyberpunk.
It was nothing important. I was just gonna say, I if there's a PlayStation game available, I usually play it on PlayStation just because I have a fetish for the PlayStation controller.
It is a great controller.
Yeah, it's.
And you can't use that controller for the PC. There's no.
But I personally can't play a first-person shooter with a controller. I just can't do that.
Interesting.
I've just been playing
WASD for life.
What?
WASD for life.
For real though, it's like I've been playing first-person shooters on PC for so long that I think the last first-person shooter I played on console was Black Ops 3, just because the COD at that point was still having trouble with their PC ports. But since then, I don't think there's a single first-person shooter I've played on console. I just can't do it.
I'm playing.
By the way, go on.
So, no, go ahead.
No, I want to know what you played, and then I was just gonna say that I saw your message that you gotta bounce soon as well. So I want to make sure.
Yeah, we're just about to start cooking dinner, but I won't say that I had no fun playing Cyberpunk even on PlayStation. Like, of course, we had some good laughs. Like there was, like we romanced Judy because we had a female character. And then we were with that cop guy, like the cop character. And my wife, she like did all the romance kind of language all the way up until the scene where they were about to fuck. And then she just like totally cockblocked him. It was the best thing. It was like, he was like, I think I'm in love with you. And then he like grabs her leg and then she's like, I can't do this. And he's like, oh, fuck. Like, That's my favorite part of games is like the lack of sexual fulfillment.
And what about the character by Keanu Reeves? That seems to, well, that's the guy I put on the
I wanted
cover.
to ask about
That was
Your
the best
jokes.
part as far as I think the writing goes in the game. I think that's also just a testament to Keanu himself because
but when
he's
it
just
came to the game,
a great actor.
like what's I guess the question in everyone's mind when it comes to the Cyberpunk game is like what exactly is like the complaint of like the trans issue. Like the complaint was that, oh well, it's almost like a retro, like it's like a boomer trying to understand it the way they were in the 80s. Like it's like a hyper exaggerated form of like I don't know, trans.
When I hear that, I just tone it out. I'm like, these people
Yeah,
are
it's
fucking
literally a
retarded.
non-issue.
No, but that's what I
In,
mean.
in
It's
an
like,
advertisement, why would you not have a hyper exaggerated form of anything?
but that's what I
Yeah.
mean. Like this sort of like weird body Gnosticism has always existed within trans issues, and I feel that it's just like I don't know what they want really. I mean, it's like there's like this weird like body
It's
augmentation.
bingo card discourse is what it is.
Yeah, it's I don't know, but what exactly is the issue? Like they're not being represented by exaggerating features of whatever particular gender, but yet it's like I don't know, having read like literature and post-humanism, and of course inevitably the trans issue always comes up. It seems that when it comes to issues like prosthesis and how the body will transform, not just with gender, but also with like not just ability, but also with like gender and identity and so forth. It just, to me, it seems like not that they are making a mountain out of a molehill, let's face it, but I don't know. It's like the average like normie buying a video game, they're not going to go out and like read Briadati about fucking post-humanism, you know what I mean? Like about trans issues and post-humanism. It's like the average person, they're like, yeah, transgender means you want to be MTF or whatever. And you know what I mean? Like it's, to me, like when it comes to like a future of like a cyberpunk sort of utopia dystopia, I mean, in some ways, like not that I agree with it whatsoever, but when it comes to like a genderless androgyny, that seems to be a more like realistic picture of the immediate future within like a techno singularity than like any and which has ancient roots as well. Like even if you like do something like study the symbolist painters, then there's sort of like this like weird androgyne going on that's tied to like this body Gnosticism.
Well, the angels are supposed to be androgynous, right? Like Gabriel and Michael and all that. But they were also badasses with swords. Like they weren't like these weak MBs. And it's in a way why I liked what ended up happening on 4chan with the NB and the Chud and then the bunker seething with rage in the background.
Yeah. Well, I mean, you can go back to hieroglyphs and see like non-conforming gender. And honestly, I think that idea of like, Paglia, of course, writes about it quite a bit in Sexual Personae, but the androgyne and like the knowledge that some people are going to divert or transcend their sex through their gender is like a thing that's always existed. The problem, and I think like a lot of people equate the criticism of trans activist ideology with like a dismissal of what is a naturally occurring state of humans in nature. And I think that's where everything gets super fucked up and chaotic, because there's always been gender transgression. It's just that gender activist ideology is incredibly marketized and honestly like wants to, like the whole idea of children being told to like get sex change operations before they're 18, like that's not a sign of a healthy society. We used to understand, like when I was a kid, I was a little fucking art nerd. I'm sure lots of people thought I was a fucking weirdo when I was a kid, but they didn't think that I should like not be. You got to figure shit out on your own. And I think when you marketize everything down to gender and identity and whatnot, it makes people feel even more pressure to commit to like commit to like a state of being as a choice when it should just be a state of being.
And the thing with a lot of these non-conforming gender identities that people, display in the realms of fashion back in the day and, other creatives, the key thing here, and I think Alexander Bard would agree with me on this, is that they brought something interesting to the table. They created something that was interesting for people to look at or to explore intellectually. But if everybody is going on that bandwagon and they're not bringing anything interesting to the table, they're just assuming it as an identity, it's not fucking enough. If they're not attaching themselves to any kind of archetype, if they just decide, I'm just going to be this ambiguous thing, okay, you can be whatever ambiguous identity you want, but is there anything else? Is there anything else that you'd like to offer humanity here, that would be interesting for us? And if it's not, it's like, okay, then why should I care? Then fine, you're a person, you're a human being, I love you as I love all the people in God's creation, yada, 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 but still like, okay, but then what? Because if there's nothing else, then you're probably going to be even emptier than I will at the end of the day if you're not creating something from this that would give some kind of a satisfaction. If it's just a hug box mentality, everybody just affirming everybody else, I think eventually people are going to run out of that hug boxness and they're going to be even lonelier and they're going to be even sadder.
I love that since we had Noah on the stream, you've said like hug box 30 times each episode.
Exactamundo, Telemundo. Yes, that's the way. That's the way it is.
But that's the thing, right? That's when you frame it as an identity. And I was asked like the relevance of Foucault in this. I mean, there is writers who have like done like analysis on like Cyberpunk and Foucault. But I don't want I don't like all those books like that are marketed to like normies, like The Matrix and philosophy. Just skip that shit. Just don't even worry about it.
Well, but, it's like we had the furry stream and we asked a similar thing. You remember, Gio? Yeah. Like what was beyond just the fetishization and
right. No, but that's what I mean. It's the fetishization of identity that is like really at the heart of like what the later period Foucault, like within the history of sexuality, that's what he was talking about, which gets, unless like you have one of the more honest academics, that's what really gets overlooked, is that ostensibly the grandfather of gender and queer theory is actually telling you that to pursue a like molarized, like singular form of identity, the way that it's become like window shopping and commodified, the way that you could just like pick it through a bunch of like aesthetic options, like that is what he's saying. Like that's the problem. That's what you should avoid. But it's just like when you have interpretations of interpretations, then you get into a situation where like literally like while I'm doing it, I'm browsing Twitter here and I see like the Deleuze bot retweeted someone that said, the Mr. Potato changing genders is because Mr. Potato read Deleuze. And that's like a meme. Like I read Deleuze, therefore I'm going to become trans now. It's like that type of stuff is like, there's taking like, and again, Cyberpunk is often, there's this theme as well, taking like a sort of an aesthetics of existence and making your life a work of art. But then to say, well, I'm going to then conform to a, politically and socially advantageous identity group, then that's like, there is like this focus on the medicalization of it, the psychomedicalization of like, well, I'm creating myself and I have empathy and I have like the focus on lived experience and so forth. And it's just like, all of that shit doesn't really matter when, global capital is ostensibly selling you like the means by which, you identify with like whatever you feel is going to lead to liberation. So
yeah, exactly.
And by the way, speaking of liberation, for Free for All Friday, that is happening this Friday, what I would like to do, and I need everybody's help on this, is bring together a lot of the people who were purged off of Twitter get communication back with them and talk with them about what's going on. But also one of the people who is coming, who has confirmed for Friday, who was in the chat of the last stream that we had. Man, I can't even keep up. What was the last stream we had? What was that about?
That was
Gay sex.
what was the last stream about? It was
what is going on?
Sonic.
Sonic.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. And I wouldn't even say it was a Sonic stream. We need a Sonic too, because we had other people in there who we talked with. We had to kind of divert away from the Hedgehog. So next time I do a Sonic stream, I am going full, you know what. But anyway, one of the people who was in the chat who's going to be joining us on Friday, her name is Andrea Seabrook, and she has a Wikipedia entry apparently. So she is an American journalist covering various formats, known for coverage of politics, Congress, the White House, and for her work hosting NPR's signature news program, All Things Considered. Wait, is this really her? I mean, maybe. Yeah, Washington, D.C. journalist, NPR. Yeah, this is her. So Seabrook was among the first on-air public radio personalities to leave NPR and start a successful independent podcast, Decode DC. So very interesting. This is what I mean about bringing people together. And she was in our chat, and she was interested in what was going on with what we're doing here. So I'm telling you, there are other ways of reaching out, as BTR has been doing for a long time. Beyond whatever chambers exist, whether they're echo chambers or not. I think that a lot of people in the sphere... Is that piss sounds?
Oh, sorry. No, that's she's cleaning a dish. Okay. I gotta roll, guys. It's been a good time.
Actually, are we gonna end the stream?
Yeah. We're gonna end right now, but I just want to say real quick. So BTR is about bringing people together.
Please, everyone, come back. We gotta have Adam on. Gotta have Textile Ranch back on. We gotta have Chaosprime back on. Hopeful Abandon back on.
Maybe Zero HP, obviously.
Zero HP, obviously. Yep.
But before we go here, I'm gonna plug everybody's stuff.
Before we're all banned from Twitter, and then.
So Adam. This is where we go to. So this is safetypropaganda.substack.com. This is where you go to get Adam's Substack. Please follow Adam on the Substack. So next we have and anything else would you like to plug, by the way, Adam?
systemofsystems.patreon.com.
There
That's
we
the podcast.
Go. Let me do that right now. System of Systems podcast. Okay, this is the podcast, so this is SoundCloud over here. See, this is why it's great to have a separate lower monitor that I am looking at to do these things. I have like one monitor here, another one right below me, which is my Cintiq tablet. So anyway, here we go. Here is the Patreon. Please become a patron of Adam's. Here it is. What is going on here? There's like two Dracula vampire gals. What are they,
it was kind of a reference to the Vampire's Castle is what I was thinking, but that's Werner Herzog's Nosferatu.
Oh man, I didn't even know he did Nosferatu. That's pretty cool. So and then Ostav, mój przyjaciel Ostav. What would you like to promote? Obviously, people have been asking about gradient descent. So gradient descent.
I kind of did my big plug already.
Doesn't matter. We're doing it again. So guys, go in here.
Absolutely, get it out there as many times as possible.
Exactly. That's what we do here.
We just got together a print run for it. It's zine style, and it's printing for the price of materials. So it's like, if you're into underground lit, it's really like a great deal for that kind of stuff. I would say you just got to go check it out. Other than that, make sure to follow me on Medium. I don't update regularly, but I do post all my long form stuff there.
Here is the Medium. Go there, please.
By the way, I also have a Substack now. So
yes, okay. Plug the Substack right now.
It's in my pin tweet. But I don't have anything on it. But I will. I'm going to do all my writing. Well, apart from like places like American Sun, I Am 1776, other places. Hopefully, I'll be publishing in Lampus Lima's Covidian Aesthetics Substack. But my own Substack, I'll be doing all my like blogging on there, and maybe. I won't monetize right away, so I'm not going to dick people over like right away. But
here is Geo Substack. Please be sure to follow him here, and also Geo
Substack, the OnlyFans of pseudo intellectuals.
Exactly. And of course, Geo's YouTube. We cannot forget about Geo's YouTube right here.
Yeah,
Giant
almost at
art.
1,000 subs. Then I can unlock various features that YouTube like monetization.
Yeah, super chats and
super chats. Yeah.
And
But
also
promo posts. I think Lev, we should step up our game with those. We should do that. Like the promo posts, like they have the community tab shit.
Oh
Apparently
yeah,
there's an algorithm thing.
I saw I'll try the fucking algorithm. I don't know, dude. I mean, it's worth a shot. It didn't generate as much as I thought it would.
You gotta keep doing it. It's persistency.
Okay, no, that's good.
Persistence
that's good.
overcomes resistance.
Good. That's good advice, brother. And of course, we have Chaosprime, Caves of Kud. Is that how you pronounce Quud? I don't know.
I pronounce it Kud. The guys mostly pronounce it Cud.
Cud.
Yeah,
I like it.
Caves.com.
I'm gonna cood. So please follow.
It's a lot like that.
Yes, exactly. So please follow Chaosprime as well on Twitter. Here is his Twitter right over here. So be sure to follow him. And next we have, James is gone. I wanted to plug James's shit. James is gone right at the time when we're supposed to be plugging. Not great. But anyway, I'm going to plug him despite him not being here. So guys, go to MK Ultra Money Podcast. This is a new... Well, he did have Bad Filmcast before, but now he's changed it into MK Ultra Money. Wonderful series. Check him out. Let's see what else over here we got. We have also Patreon/MK Ultra Money. So please contribute to him. And there we go. Look at this. This is designed by FODcorp. This logo over here. Very beautiful stuff. And finally, let me plug myself because I hardly do that and I should do that. While I am still active on Twitter, twitter.com/levpo. Join me. I have not that many followers right now, 2,204, but also I got to be tweeting a hell of a lot more, a lot of things to do. Anyway, guys, buy my crypto cards as well. We were talking about cryptocurrency. And actually, before I plug my cryptocurrency, I also wanted to quickly mention that my father, Alexander Polyakov, he has crypto art as well. So I just want to link it right now. So it's on Super Rare. And Super Rare is a service where they provide, different artworks that you could buy on the blockchain. And here is my father's superrare.co/Alex Polyakov. I just want to quickly show some of the works over here, just so you see what exactly we're talking about. This is the latest of his, called Seesaw. It is loading right now, so I'm just going to... Here we go. I'm going to grab it here. This is a Seesaw. Hold on, why doesn't it work? Everybody subscribe. Don't forget to subscribe. There we go. He's coming back. Okay. Oh, files are too powerful, so I have to take it and shrink it down. Again, everybody
Sorry, I had to take a
subscribe.
shit.
I promoted your shit while you were taking a shit, so everything ended up working out.
Based. Awesome.
Everything's
Great.
just shit.
Yes. So check this art out real quick. This is crypto art. You can buy this piece of art right now on Super Rare. So, here, I got to scroll down. Okay, so superrare.co/Alex Polyakov. And look at this artwork over here. Isn't this adorable? See, we have the squirrel and the mouse over here, and we have the curious cat probably wants to eat these little chiclets over here. And I like the design of the seesaw that my dad created. See, it has these profiles of these beasts over here that they're riding. So, yeah, my dad digitally painted this, and he's a great artist. And, of course, you can, and follow James Healy.
You brought
on
the Twitter.
Yes,
also,
I did forget the Twitter.
I just dropped a little bit early the season 2, episode 5 of MK Ultra Money, DPRK, Alex Jones, where I had my friend Justin Martell on, who was talking about his experience with Alex Jones, and he's been to North Korea 3 times, so he talks about that, which is a very good and interesting episode. So check that out. Jules is on the episode also.
Nice.
So it's Jules, Arsene, me, and my friend Justin. So it's a good one. It's up now.
Excellent. Please do that. And lastly, but of course not leastly, patreon.com/breaktherules. Go there. One of the things that we're going to be doing one of the things we're already doing is we release the audio versions of all of our episodes earlier than they're available to anybody else. So you will have first dibs on that. $5 patrons, what is wrong with me, are going to get access to our Discord as far as being able to post in the private group discussion in our Discord, as well as being able to post images inside of btr-chat. Another way you can post images on btr-chat is if we know you enough to trust you with it, we are going to give you the permission to do that. But it's a privilege, not a right, because we know what happened last
That's
time.
right.
Exactly.
Oh, God.
So yes. So don't get me started. So just follow us everywhere. Go to our Patreon. That is very important that you do that. That you keep supporting it. $20 patrons are going to get beautiful wooden magnets. Again, the magnets that are in the works right now. We decided to go for a profile view of Definitely Legit, and that is currently being done right now. And we are also going to do, like I said before, an inflated lioness. I'm not sure exactly what it's going to look like yet, but that is also in the works. So I figured that for the Patreon magnets, it's interesting not just to be like random, random like squiggly designs, but we want to take it one step further and make designs that would resonate with the public. So something that is inside of our consciousness, like fat inflated lionesses that you could play basketball with, using them as the basketball in the savannah of life. Anyway, guys, this is the end of the stream. I appreciate all of you, and let us all be anti-fragile together. And like Biden says, we got to build back better. So
Buck break better,
Like
baby.
Biden says, look, Jack, you can have gay sex with me all you want. I'm the gayest president ever made.
And that is the end of the show, ladies and gentlemen. And thank you so much. Mwah. Good night, everybody. Subscribe right now. Take care.
God bless. Goodbye.
Thank you.